right, everybody, I'm Coach C, the current trying to do as best he can athletic director after somebody who did such a great job. And I want to welcome you, but before I do, I want to tell you the procedure for this evening. I'm going to lead it off, and I got a great batting order, comparable to a Saturday Night Live skit. Pretty close. And then we got the man of the hour coming up, and then all the rest of you are going to be telling all your stories about our great man as well. So that's where I'm hoping this goes this evening.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
You mean there's going to be people speaking after me?
Yeah. Good evening and welcome. Welcome to a very special Dragon Night. Welcome to a night that we celebrate a great honor being bestowed upon a very great dragon. We're on the eve of Wally Conacher being inducted into the Minnesota Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Hall of Fame. Wally will be formally inducted next Wednesday, April 4th, at an honors banquet at the MNIAA State Conference held in St. Cloud. But tonight we honor him Dragon style. I had the privilege to nominate him for this honor, having known Wally since I came to Pine City in '98, and then when I became AD and going my first few annual state AD conventions, I listened to the Hall of Fame inductees for those years, and I said, Wally needs to be in this group. So I did my work. I filled out the form. I got the letters of recommendation written by those who had had the opportunity to work with him and submitted them on his behalf. The form deftly documented. The letters acknowledge what we all know. The man bleeds green. And all that he does so making sure the best interest of the student athlete is always taken care of as a result of any of his decisions. Wally has had a full career, a career that is still not done, as he still does those same things, making those decisions in the best interest of the Dragon students by representing us on the school board. He himself an athlete here in Pine City, as well as having taught and coached at his own high school. He sat in the AD's chair. He's been very influential at the state level, and he has been our past MNIAA president, as well as serving on numerous committees in the Minnesota State High School League. He continues to be a mentor to many of the area ADs, one in particular that has his cell number in a spot easily accessible. Sorry about all those calls from Wally. Tonight, we get to honor you. And I formulated a batting lineup to do just that. But unlike my short-lived baseball career that for some reason I never got to lead off, tonight I get to set the order and I get to go first. I got my favorite Wally story that to me represents the man truly does bleed green. It was a Friday night in late September 2006. I was standing around the bonfire at the house, de-stressing after a hard-fought game in which the Dragons had broke the long curse and finally beat those dreaded Mustangs 8-6. The rest of the staff had gone inside for some of Glenda's famous chili and brownies, and I was just standing there stoking the fire. Out of the darkness, up comes Wally, extending his hand and states in that calm voice, "Now I can retire." Heck, if we would have known that, Wayne Hansman and I would have worked out a deal with more long before that. But we found out, much like a certain quarterback that used to wear number 4, when Wally said he was retiring, it was not really the end of his career. 2, 3, 4 different times coming out of retirement. He would always come back when the Dragons needed him to make things right again in Dragonland. You know, actually, when I say that, that's not a real comforting thought to me now as AD. A couple more mistakes, and you know who may be coming back out of retirement. But congratulations, Ralph. Wally, you are very well deserving of this honor. And now it's time for me to bring up the next hitter in our batting lineup. Batting second, Miss Mill.
When Bill asked me if I would speak today, I immediately, more or less, said, of course. As I pondered it some, I realized that I was not very clear about the expectation of the content. He said to tell a Wally story or two. Huh. So is it a journey down memory lane? Is it a roast? That could be risky. And looking at the rest of the speakers, I decided that Wally could be well roasted. So I decided to take an opportunity to say thank you. When one takes a position of authority, decisions are made constantly. Some are easy. Where should I have lunch? What bank in the Cayman Islands should I hide the vast sums of money I have made as an overpaid administrator so the IRS doesn't find it? As the activities director, Wally was entrusted with overseeing all activities, not just athletics. He had to learn what mattered to the speech team as well as the basketball teams and the band department. A steep and diverse learning curve for sure. In the day-to-day business of running an activities department, the decision-making is constant, and it's rare when a decision is universally adored or even accepted. Someone is always unhappy. Sometimes you just have to make the decision and move on. Wally really grew in the job and worked to make sure, I think, that the arts, activities, and athletics were treated fairly. No matter the outcome of a dispute, the finality of a decision, there is no doubt that Wally always did what he felt was best for Pine City kids. He himself said that he bleeds green, and other than a brief tenure in Bram, really, Wally?
That's part of green for that.
Yeah, so we know you can be bought. Oh, I'm sorry, the rest of this has got to go. No one can question his dedication, enthusiasm, and loyalty to our school and our community. I think that anyone who worked so hard and for so long in one place wonders about their legacy. Did I matter? Did I make a difference? Will anyone remember that I was here? Wally, we see your legacy in your daughter, your grandsons, the athletic fields, the halls of Pine City High School, Legion Baseball, Knights of Columbus, and of course here at the golf course. Congratulations to you, Wally. Thank you for giving Pine City your best. You know, it's kind of a good speech. It would make a good eulogy. Jane, you know, you want a copy? Congratulations, Wally.
Well, I too would like to congratulate you, Wally. When Coach C asked me to write a letter for the Hall of Fame committee in support of you, I sat back, meditated, closed my eyes, and brainstormed all the words I could think of to describe you. At first, all that came to mind was retired. 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 He's retired so many times, Goodyear wants to buy stock in it. But then, it gets better. But then words like perseverance, passion, loyalty, responsibility, love of students, and PCHS came to mind. Well, I first got to know Wally in 1976. When I came to Pine City, I taught social studies and English, coached basketball, so I got to know him pretty well. Back in those days, the Pine City Education Association used to sponsor social gatherings. You know where I'm going? You know about the roast?
Yes.
Okay. Wally and I served together on the entertainment committee. We decided it would be a good idea to roast a pig as a way to get the faculty together, and Wally graciously agreed to host the gathering at his house, much to Jane's surprise. Well, the roaster was hauled into the backyard, and we were signed up for shifts to do the pig watch during the 24 hours it took to cook the pig fully. So several teachers gathered to do the preliminary work of preparing the pig and putting it on a roaster. And when I left at about 11 o'clock that night, Wally was still in supervision mode. He was near the roaster, standing guard with his trusty garden hose in case the fire flared up. Well, my watch began at 4 a.m. and Wally promised me before I left that I'll be out there, I'll help you. So shortly after I arrived, he came out of the house, carrying in one hand a lounge chair and a blanket, and in the other hand, some Scottish friend he met named Johnny Walker Red Label. But Wally was wearing the most ugly purple pajamas I have ever seen. Well, I've never seen purple pajamas. These were ugly, weren't they? He set his chair up, spread his blanket out, reached in his pockets, pulled out 2 glasses, and we proceeded to celebrate the impending sunrise. Just the 3 of us, Wally, Johnny, and me. We had a few flare-ups. We had to use the garden hose a little bit, but before long, Johnny Walker was gone. Wally said Johnny was totally drained, but that was okay because the next time I looked at him, Wally was fast asleep in his lounge chair. My gosh, I thought to myself, those purple pajamas are the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I sure hope they never asked Wally to pick colors or design athletic uniforms. Because he's going to pick the wrong shade of Kelly green, or worse yet, he's going to put too much black into the uniforms and he's going to create a major school conflict. Right, Jim? So a few years later, Jane got pregnant, and she and Wally got to attend some birthing classes together. Do you remember this?
No.
I'll remind you. The class was full of pregnant women and their husbands, and the instructor said, "Ladies, remember, exercise is good for you. Walking is especially beneficial. Just pace yourself, make plenty of stops, and try to stay on soft surfaces like grass. Gentlemen," he said, "remember you're in this together. It wouldn't hurt you to go walking with her." And after a few moments, Wally raised his hand. "Yes," said the instructor. Wally said, "I was just wondering, would it be all right if she carries my golf bag?" He's always concerned about it. But eventually I moved from being Wally's teaching and coaching colleague to an administrative position and was able to take advantage of Wally's great passion for Dragon athletics by hiring him to be our activities director. He proved to be outstanding in his 15 years in the position. Largely through his initiative and support, we were able to offer 18 different sports for our male and female athletes. In addition, he managed the school's other activities, as Bill said, including speech, drama, many clubs, and special events. He encouraged student participation in all activities, not only belonging to a team, but also performing on the team, regardless of your ability. Wally was responsible for virtually all the aspects of the school's activities program. And through the years, he faced many difficult challenges. There were reductions in activities and staff because of budget cuts. There were student violations of the code of conduct. There were underperforming or combative coaches, student and parent complaints, and of course there was always pressure from his supervisors. One of his greatest strengths was his ability to always put the students first in his decisions, regardless of the pressures placed on him. Pressures from individuals or various special interest groups, from personal friendships, from conflicts that arose during the course of serving in such a difficult position. And though he was forced to make some tough decisions, In the end, it was his love of the Dragons and his passion for their success that drove him to be so successful in his job. It's sometimes said about coaches, and it's been said tonight, they bleed their school colors, and we know that Wally most certainly bleeds Kelly green. He was an outstanding activities director who deeply cared and sincerely cared for each and every coach, advisor, student, and fan who wore or supported the Dragon colors. Though I still suffer from post-traumatic stress as a result of seeing him in those purple pants long ago, I give him my most sincere congratulations for his inclusion in the Minnesota Athletic Administrators Association Hall of Fame. Thank you, Wally. And now, batting cleanup, we have Bob Carlson.
I'm going to try to get the first pitch. I don't have a lot to say. Wally and I are high school classmates, class of 1964, and we were basketball and baseball teammates in high school, but we also played baseball together during the summer. Some of you are probably old enough to remember when Pine City had a town team, the Pirates, and we played pirate baseball together, and Wally was our first baseman. And I always admired the way Wally played first base. He played first base as if he owned the base, as if it was his own personal property. And you didn't want to be a base runner who rounded first base too far, trying to get back to the base, because Wally wouldn't let you get there. Wally would block first base the way that a catcher blocks home plate in baseball. And I don't know if what he did was exactly legal. And Roger, maybe you taught him how to do that, but Roger was a first baseman too. But Wally got us a lot of outs we probably didn't deserve at first base because of the way he used to protect the base. And I can still remember him doing that even when I was standing way out in left field, the way he blocked that base. So that's just an example of why Wally was so much fun to play with, and what a great teammate he always was, and the honor he's getting next week. Thank you, Wally.
Dan, you're up.
Well, it makes me a little nervous to watch everybody come up here with a piece of paper and something prepared to say. I really thought it was gonna be Wally and a few coaches, but, so did I. But everybody, you know, the people that have been here before me have said things that I was gonna say, so it cuts what I have to say fairly short. And Bill did a great thing. You know, he lined this up with about 5 people to say something, and he said, we'll keep it short and to the point, and then we can get on with the main one. And you know what they say is that good speakers, all good speakers have a moment. The problem is, most of them try to stretch it into an hour. So by doing this, none of us can do that. But I want to say about Wally that my first remembrance of Wally was, I was a pretty young kid, and he was in high school, and I remember going to events my dad would take me to, and Wally was a player. So I knew about him way back then, and then I had a couple older sisters who used to say nice things that I never understood about Wally, and he was an upperclassman for them. What really surprised me is when I was a senior in high school here, Wally was teaching in his first year. And I didn't take psychology class. I didn't think it was necessary. And they wouldn't let me in anyway. I couldn't understand the classmates, the girls in my class, talking about this cute teacher they had in psychology. So, well, I didn't understand. Wally always moved the women. I had some things I was prepared to say about Wally, but in respect for Jane and his father and his mother, I won't say those things.
Thanking you.
Ever since I've known of Wally, and through the years I got to know them a lot better when we each have one daughter, and they happen to be the same age, so we got off to a lot of events together. Wally was always quite a baseball fanatic, as Bob was talking about, and one time we were on the girls, Krista and my daughter were in a basketball group. I think Elisa and Mary Kay actually were their coaches, and I went along. We went to Fargo, and we were spending some off time walking around this mall, and Krista was there, and I said, hey, let's go look at this stuff, this would be interesting. And they had a statue of Roger Maris. Of course, as you all know, he was from North Dakota. And Krista says, who is that? And I thought, Wally, you gotta get to work here. She's getting too old not to know that. In the years beyond that, Wally as an AD is where I got to know him best. And all the years I've been a board member, Wally had in those years become the AD. And the characteristic behind Wally and everything he does is he's very organized. And he's very consistent. He's very loyal, especially Green. Sorry, Brent. I knew when I seen him sitting behind the bench during those tournament games that the only thing he wanted different was to have a green sweatshirt on. So you did a good job keeping them in blue. But Wally has always looked out for the interests of the kids first. You know, they say that when tired and worn out coaches or managers or ADs want to move on, where do they go? Well, they find themselves in the boardroom. The only thing Wally didn't understand is that meant B-O-R-E-D. So in the last few years, he's ended up in the boardroom. And Wally never makes a decision without thinking about how does it impact kids first. The second thing would be how does it impact their parents. So his concern is with the students and the parents and the people of this district. And it's been a pleasure to work with Wally. We have a good rapport. He's good with all the board members. You know, I mentioned he was so organized. I hear about that from every administrator that he ever worked under. I hear about it from other ADs. It's one of the reasons I think that he gets the positions he does amongst the ADs. And we see that on the board. He's been our clerk nearly since he showed up on the board. And he keeps things in order. He keeps the I's dotted and the T's crossed. And we really appreciate all that. And Wally, this honor is really well deserved.
You're up, Terry.
You know, I think they talked to my son about my batting, so I'm down in the order. When I play softball, they always DH for me. Well, I'll tell you what, the first part of my speech, he took care of. The second part of my speech, she took care of. Now I can get down to the two amigos. All right? You know who the two amigos are. 1, 2. They took over for Howard Olson on the class trip. And Howard got them on trains and they'd go here and there, not very far, for not very long. By the time the two amigos got done, they were flying all over. They went to Disneyland. They went to Colorado. They went to DC. They went, and finally they hit their destination, Orlando. And they spent many, many years going to Orlando. The one thing I could not understand about the two amigos when I was outside looking in on that class trip was how they could go down 2 days early to make sure everything was going to happen. All set up. I don't know how they convinced the administrators to do that. You must have had good pictures. There they are. I got to go along a couple times. And then finally when Roger retired, I got to be an amigo. But I was on the bottom rung, so. Wally had this thing, and Roger had this thing. Excellent. It was organized. We flew down. For some kids, it was the first time they were on the plane. Some kid went to Florida selling 50-cent candy bars on the bus. 3 boxes a week for school. He made not only his trip, but his spending money down there. So here's a kid, never would have had a chance. He went because we had fundraising and so on. And that trip was beautiful. The only thing is, I'm really mad at Wally. The one shot I had at being the king. At Universal Studios, they have the Mardi Gras. And each day they pick a guy and a couple of ladies to be the king and queen of the Mardi Gras parade. Well, Wally always stayed back and checked the rooms and so on. But there I was walking around with Debbie Bombard, myself, and Terry Schobel. So they see us. You're on camera all the time there. When you go there, you're on camera. So they saw us walking around, interacting with our kids and so on. And they find a guy come up to us and he says, "Do you guys want to be in the Mardi Gras parade tonight?" Well, we hemmed and hawed and we hemmed and hawed. He said, "Well, what do we got to do?" He said, "Well, you'll be the king and these will be your princesses." And we looked at each other and said, "Oh no. We'd have to go back, get Wally's permission." And so we said, no, we couldn't go. So the one chance I got to be king never panned out. The other thing is, the two amigos kept Legion baseball going in this town for 20-some years. All 3 of my boys played for them. Kyle played for them. And those were the days when we were playing District 10, and if you're in the Legion there, you know District 10 goes down to the cities. We played Bloomington. They had a guy, Kent Herbick, some guy, a pretty decent ball player, but we had a guy that struck him out. We were that competitive in baseball, and it's kind of gone downhill since the two amigos got out of the dismiss. And the last thing I'd like to say is the people in this town don't appreciate all of this stuff that goes on. And it was hit on the decision he has to make. And there's times I've been in his office, you did something wrong, and you screwed up, but you got to take it. And they have to make decisions, and I think the kids always understood that the rules were the rules and away we go. And that, I think, is one of the things that the kids knew. You went on a class trip, it was this. If you went to a party and you got caught, it was over. There was no bargaining. And I think that's the mark of a good administrator, is that person who can take the laws, take the rules, everybody knows the rules, and you just enforce them. And it's kind of a bittersweet thing is that we don't have his records from high school, because Roger told us at one of our coffee things that all the articles that were in the paper when Wally was in high school, he wrote.
And now batting 7th, the man of the hour, Wally Conacher.
Stick a fork in me. I'm well done. Actually, pinch me. I'm having a hard time believing all this. Lisa Mill saying nice things about me. George Johnson talking loud enough so I could hear him.
and not adjusting your glasses with the wrong finger. Gary Mickledge didn't greet me today for the first time by saying, "You got things squared away?" And before I could even answer, he would tell me how to square it away. It was nice to see Bob Carlson here. Bob and I were roommates for 3 days at the University of Minnesota, but that was for the state tournament. I was going there. I would go there later. Thank you, Dan, for your comments. Dan Peterson. Feel very privileged tonight that 6 of the 7 board members are here tonight. That's just absolutely great. Again, I'm just having so much difficulty comprehending this whole thing. Santa Bob, are you out there?
I'm here, Wally.
I think Christmas is a little early this year for me.
That's right. And it's not over yet, Wally.
Oh, boy. As I look at my past and the early days, I didn't really make it too far. My first 9 years, I believe, we lived on a house only 400 yards from here. And I recall so many times doing farm work here and dreaming about baseball and things of that sort. And every time I did some farm work, I realized I'm not going to be doing this forever. I was fortunate to have an uncle, Dwayne Glasso, who in my freshman year, the fall of my freshman year, my mother and I got on a train and we went down to St. Paul and got picked up, and I got to go to the university football game. And he was really a scholar in that, and he had tickets in that. And we're walking down the street, and he says, "What do you think of that?" And I said, "It's just gorgeous." And we walk a little farther, and he said, "Well, what do you think of that?" And I said, "Well, it's beautiful. I mean, I want to go here." And he says, "You know, I've never heard anybody talk about the math and science buildings like that." And I didn't realize he's looking this way and I'm looking at the sorority girls. So, anyway, that day, I made up my mind that I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Well, that's pretty uncommon for somebody to know what they wanted to do in 9th grade. But things worked out okay. Again, I want to thank Terry for what he did. I've already given George too much credit, right? Too much? Okay. I'd like to talk about Roger Hagser. He was my basketball coach. I was not too fond of him as a basketball coach. He pushed me, and he pushed me hard. It wasn't until I got out of school that I realized that I needed that. And some of the ones that he wasn't pushing were sitting on the bench. But forget about the X's and O's of basketball and baseball that I learned about him. There was one thing that sticks in my mind, and that is many coaches, when they score the last basket for you, get the last hit for you, or whatever, the coach and the player are done. But I needed some help as far as my college career and things of that particular sort, and he was there for me. And I got my big break when, in 1971, he came and offered me the job of Legion Baseball, and I hung on to that for a long time until it became too difficult to be the athletic director in that. So we remain extremely close right now, and well, Coach C, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you for nominating me. When you told me you were going to do this, I couldn't believe it. I still don't quite believe it. My first superintendent is out there, Candy Ames. No, everybody knows that Candy is brilliant, okay? But she knows nothing about athletics.
Oh, you should have told her, they wouldn't have guessed.
She calls me up this week, no, she sent me an email, she says, what is this? This basketball team set the school record for number of wins. Well, can you explain that to me? Yeah, I said, they got more wins than any other team in the history of the school. Well, there's a little bit more to it. Don Lund was principal for me at the very beginning, and he was extremely helpful because he also was an AD, and I'm extremely thankful for that. But the most important people for me were my parents. I got the chance to participate in sports. That was not very common for a farm boy. Plus, it was a lot more preferable than working on that. So I got that chance, and I wasn't going to let that chance go. And so I want to thank my mother and my dad for what I've become. Thank you. When I became activities director, I thought I knew quite a bit about athletics, but I didn't know anything at all about fine arts. So I got a lot of help from the band and the choir and the one-act play and musicals and all that kind of thing, and appreciate all the people of the past activities. And I see that in our daughter and what she gained, the competitive spirit, the management of time, making good choices. And she made a good choice with you, Scott. We have two grandsons, Owen and Evan. I call them Mickey and Ricky. Evan is, oh my, way too competitive already in 9th grade, or at 9 years of age, I mean. But Owen, he's the analyst. And I was principal a few years ago for a few weeks at St. Mary's, and he said, take me over there, I want to see your office and that kind of thing. So we went over there and he kind of looked at it. Well, in November, I was walking back to our room at Cragen's at a school board conference when I get this phone call from Coach C. And he says, I know something you don't know. He can't sing. But anyway.
I wasn't trying.
So I said, what do you want me to do? Well, sit down. So then he told me, okay. I got back to the room and I was almost speechless, and Jane didn't know what was going on. And when I told her, she says, why? So then Mickey comes up for the weekend or whatever, soon after that, and he said, Grandpa, what did you do to deserve this award? I had no answer. But today I do. It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to Pine City Schools, the students, the staff, the coaches, the administration, the community. And it belongs to one person also, and that's my wife, Jane. Now, there's...
Yeah, Rita and I thought we should.
Well, I get to speak, you get to listen. I've waited years for that. I had graduated from high school, and I was a year out of high school, going back for my sophomore year at the university, and I had a friend, probably my closest friend, an individual by the name of Tom Mall. And Tom decided to go into the Navy. So he went down to was going to go to the airport to fly out to the Navy, and he said, would you ride with me and see me out? My dad will be driving and that. He didn't tell me that Jane was going with, okay? So anyway, we took him down to the airport, and it was kind of a sad farewell and stuff like that. The last thing he said to me was, "You take good care of her." Well, I think I've done a real good job. I do want to tell you that it was extremely uncomfortable when he came home on leave. With a few glitches in that, we decided to get married, and I told her what my dream was, that I wanted to finish school. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. And she then ended up giving up her job in Minneapolis or St. Paul, where she was at, on to St. Paul, we went, finished up there, got my student teaching back in Minneapolis, slid it down to Minneapolis, gave up her job there, and then I can't type. I'm the only clerk in the state of Minnesota that can't type. But I got that white there. By the way, it was just fantastic, and should have recognized her way at the beginning, so thank you, Deb. So, I had graduated in March, and Candy graduated, I believe, in June then, something of that sort,
Yeah.
1970. Jobs were very, very hard to come by. And we sent out about 200, at least 200 applications. Well, I signed my name to the bottom, and she did all the typing. And on about the same day or two, two offers came, one from Pine City. Actually, the superintendent, Clarence Ethison, had actually come on campus, and one to Baudette, and that's where Roger had taught before. It was a split decision. Jane wanted to go to Baudette, I wanted to go to Pine City, and that's probably one of the few arguments I've ever won. I'm just saying that it's all about her, and I told her that I wanted to run for the school board. I told her it was one meeting a month, and I don't know if she bought that, but she puts down on the calendar every time I'm gone. Meeting, and then of course, well, I'm not going to go into that. But thank you.
I still deserve the award.
She says she deserves the award, unlike like Vicky's question, I should say. I have no answer to that. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. This has just been absolutely fantastic. They ask that you come up and sign the guest book. I know there's more than 6 of you here. So please do that. And We're not letting anybody else up here, are we?
Here's what I'd like to say. After we give this guy a big round of applause, I want you to find him and tell me more stories about him, because I've only known him for 20 years. There's a lot more stories that I don't know about that guy. So make sure I'm in earshot so that I can listen to all these great stories. We got appetizers back here. Steve's ready to serve you with whatever you need back there. And thank you so much for coming. And Wally, have a great time at the banquet in St. Cloud. Everybody's going to be roaring, I'm sure, on your behalf. Oh, yeah, come on up, come.
I can start it out with this. You're off for Wally, you're off for Wally. Someone in the crowd is yelling, you're off for Wally. 1, 2, 3, 4, who are you gonna yell for? Wally, that's who. When I heard these wonderful speakers today and read the paper, it brings a couple of words to me: sympathy and empathy. And Wally had those words down before we would even old enough to say those words. We'd just done them. I can remember instances. I remember one time, and I'm not going to name the person or anything, but Wally had always had a feeling, and a good feeling, about letting, like people said, everybody that talked to Gary said, that to let people share and let them. It goes back to a marble game when we were little kids, and this is and it was called Wallsies. This is before Wally and I were old enough for sports. This is when we were playing marbles and the girls were jump roping. And there was one of the little boys that didn't have any marbles. And you know what Wally did? Wally gave him some marbles, and he collected some marbles from us to give to this boy so he would have some marbles, instead of sitting there feeling bad. And that's the way Wally was all through the years that I've known him. And I was so happy about when he talked about his mom and dad, and because I was a city boy and I lived a half a block from the school. And Wally was the country boy, and there was no freeway. So when I went out to Wally's, because I wanted to see the little calves, just loved the little calves. Of course, I didn't have to take care of them. But I could walk across the fields. Didn't have to go just walk, remember? Some little woods and a little, across a few fences and a couple of things like that, and I'd be at Wally's house. But it was really wonderful, and I can tell you that, can I tell a couple stories about, well, one of them is living a half block.
Wait, you haven't let me answer yet.
Well, I gotta tell you a couple of things, Wally, but I'll make it short. Living a half a block from the school, well, my parents were very, I mentioned this at the August meeting today. I called our our biology teacher, Mr. Aaron, but I call him by his first name. Mom said, you do not call an adult, especially your teachers, by their first name. I remember that. And then another time is that, I'll tell just a couple of things about Coach Nell and Coach Saunders. Coach Nell, he was also the shop teacher. And shop and home ec were totally separate back then. Girls were in shop. Girls were in home ec, and the boys were in shop. And Mr. Nell, I was practicing to be fullback. This is before, about the 9th grade or so. And I went, he called the fullback draw. I went in the wrong hole. And Mr. Nell said, Kate, were you standing on your head when they passed out the brains? Well, I never did that again, and I ended up that I got to be starting fullback a couple years later. But and then another one, I'll just tell this one, and then I'll get out of here. But he thought one of the Blanchard boys were, and this is a cute one too. And Wally remembers this, And when Coach Snell would say these, he wouldn't say it like to whisper. He would be very loud, the whole team would hear it. And they made a mistake and he said, Gary, were you, when God passed out the brains, did you think he said trains and didn't take anything? And, you know, and I was standing next to Gary Hill because he was the quarterback then. And Gary said, well, if he had any brains, he would have taken the trains. Anyway, to wind this up, I wanted to give this football to Wally. This football, I would watch them. See, they're in the south end of the school, west end of the school. It wasn't there then. There was just a field there. Remember, Wally? Mm-hmm. And the teams would practice on them. Now, this was when we were about 10 years old, Wally and I. And I would watch them practice. And they left this football in the field, and I took it after practice, and I brought it home. And about a few months later, well, Mom, she said, where did you get that? And I said, well, I found it over at the playground where they were playing football, practicing football. And she said, well, you got to give that back. Well, the nice part of the story is that I went over to Coach Nell and Coach Saunders both, and I told them, I said, I'm sorry that I want to play football someday, and I was almost crying, and they actually gave me the football. And this football is, I would say, about 61 or 62 years old, and it's one that the Dragons played with, and Wally, I want to give you this football, and I want you to do it. By the way, Wally's in the Hall of Fame yearbook as athlete, #1 athlete in our yearbook, and also most talkative. You were with Sally and Sally with #1 athlete, and also you were just tops in academics. So thanks, Wally, for everything. And
buddy for the last 4 years. Every year he worries about how heavy my backpack will be because he can't carry it if it's too heavy. He even asked my teachers for no homework, so my backpack will be light. I think he has some pull because he's on the school board, but I always think some rockets in there. Congratulations, Bobby.
Wally ran away from home.
My dad, he was in a cornfield. My dad found him there and brought him back.
I'm Ron Dewey, and I spent 34 years on the school board, way back from Espos's time. And I really appreciate Pine City people. I mean, I've said over the years, I wouldn't want to have been on any other board around because you hear all the things that happen on other school boards. And I would have not stayed on for 34 and a half years had it been for Pine City people. I mean, we've got longevity in all the teachers and superintendents and administrators, longevity, and it has been one of the greatest. And Wally is part of it. He's been part of it all these years. I said one thing about Wally, he was always really patient about getting his own way. The biggest experience I had was when I went to the in Orlando to the
Senior trip.
Senior. I said that, you know, that usually they take one board member off. And I said, so I applied for it. And it was right after I had had an ankle replacement, and I was already about 80 years old at the time. I left that role, and I was gonna be, they kind of looked at each other, wondered if I'd be able to keep up, but I did. The only thing I didn't get on was the roller coaster. My grandson's annual, the line was so long that I never got on the roller coaster, but I got on some of the other wild rides. And I found out, you know, that in order to handle them wide, you had to scream like the teenagers did. And it worked. But anyway, I sure appreciated everything this whole school system has been all these years.
My name is Steve Eklund. I'm the school board chair at Brown. The only blue and gold person probably in this room. I want to personally thank Wally. We had an activities director that had a health problem a few years ago, and he agreed to come over and help us out. And you talk about instant respect from our coaching staff. He was a class act, and it was one of the best moves we ever made. My wife, we were talking about senior class trip, decided she would be one of the chaperones for our senior class trip. Told her she was nuts. I said, you're gonna find somebody that knows what's going on. So she calls up Wally, who had lots of experience in that area, laid the whole thing out for her and everything figured out, and it actually went pretty well, which surprised me. I don't know if you realize how lucky you are, as many times when an administrator retires and they come back, they just go through the motions. Think about neighboring districts, how that's happened. Somebody retires, they can't find somebody comes back to fill up a hole. That's never happened with Wally. When he comes back, he set the bar so high to start with, he just continues to set it higher and higher. I've been fortunate that I've been on the school board for a long time. Wally's been on the school board, we've been friends for a long time. We travel to MSBA conventions and everything else. The thing that I admire most about him is he will never, ever say a negative thing about Pine City. Band is doing great, basketball team's doing great, and it's always positive. And my hat's off to you for that. Congratulations on a well-deserved award.